It was a magnificent spring day, April 25th, when nature had already fully awakened from hibernation. The air was filled with freshness, and a light breeze played in the treetops, as if reminding us that winter was behind us. My name is Bob Watson, and I am a tax accountant based in Omaha, Nebraska. Even though tax season was extended this year due to the pandemic, most of my clients were able to file their returns last week. Basically, they all found themselves in a situation where they had to pay a little more taxes than they expected. And although the deadline for submitting documents was extended, this did not save them from accruing interest for late payments. For many, it was an unpleasant surprise, but for me, as a professional, it was just another day at work. Smart clients submitted their documents on time, and I could not help but be happy for them. This saved them from unnecessary fines and problems. My office is, in my opinion, quite decent. I work on the third floor of an office building on the north side. One of the main features of my workspace is a wall of large windows. On the one hand, I can't complain the panoramic windows make the space light and airy, but due to the fact that they face north, sunlight rarely floods the room with its bright rays. Every time I look up from the monitor, my gaze is drawn to the grayish walls of a similar office building located directly opposite. Sometimes I can see the figures of workers in the next building, immersed in their tasks, which for a moment reminds me that life is in full swing around me, even if I sit immersed in endless numbers and tables. Those who are familiar with the life of tax accountants know that the end of winter and the beginning of spring is a real marathon for us. We spend hours on the computer, carefully checking every figure and every document so that our clients can sleep peacefully. If I had a view of picturesque mountains or a beautiful sea from my window, it wouldn't change much. My head would still be occupied with thoughts of tax codes and numerical reports. However, this day I felt different. At lunchtime, I went outside to breathe in the fresh air and was pleasantly surprised at how wonderful this spring day turned out to be. The sun was finally breaking through the clouds, and a warm breeze reminded me that life doesn't end outside the walls of my office. The air was full of the aromas of blooming flowers and the freshness of grass that had recently begun to turn green. It was that very moment when it seems that nature itself is calling you to leave all your worries and enjoy its tranquility. I made a decision. No matter what, I deserved some rest. This day was too good to spend on paperwork. I took the afternoon off and went home. My wife, Marie, and I live in a comfortable home overlooking the Platte River, where its calm waters flow to the Missouri River. Our house is on a hill, and our backyard has a magnificent view of the river, which floods in the spring, creating wide, mirrored expanses that reflect the blue sky. As I drove home, the spring landscape outside the window filled me with peace. The road leading to our house wound through green hills and fields where young grass swayed gently in the wind. Along the way, I saw the river sparkling in the distance, its waters sparkling in the sun like jewels. The day was too beautiful not to make full use of it. I imagined how Marie and I would sit on the terrace, admire the river, and discuss how life at such moments seems surprisingly simple and harmonious. When I arrived at the house, there was a BMW in the entrance. The license plate with the words "Big Rich" made it clear whose car it was. Richard Newberg Roman III, or Big Rich, for the prisoner who beat out his numbers, came to my wife. I drove past the house, turned the corner, parked, and walked home. You see, Dickie, as many people called him, was the slacker son of Richard Newberg Jr. I assumed his license plate was an indication that his wallet made him big and rich. He argued that there is another reason why he is called Big. One thing was for sure: his ego was huge. If he could be bought for what he was actually worth and sold for the amount he set for himself, you wouldn't have to work another 5 lifetimes. Dickie was widely known, thanks in part to his father, Richard Newberg Jr., who was one of the richest men in Omaha and perhaps anywhere. These days, he made his new money mostly in commercial real estate. Junior, as he was called, tried everything with his son, but to no avail. The old man was brilliant, purposeful, and successful in everything he did. Dickie was a loser. Our house has a large veranda that wraps around 2 sides of the building. This allows you to sit and enjoy the view of the river, no matter where the sun is or where the wind is blowing. I crept onto the veranda and headed towards the front of the house. As I approached the living room, I heard Marie and Dickie talking. All the windows were open, and I was only 5 or 6 feet away from them, right outside on the veranda, while they sat inside, side by side at the windows. I took out my phone and turned on the recording app. In my profession, people often discuss fine details that they are very familiar with, but I have to review them to make sure everything is as it should be. As a result, I'm very familiar with my recording app and use it often. Marie, this will never be easy. When he gets home, tell him he's too boring and you're leaving. Dickie, can't you be with me? I kind of love him, and I'd hate to see him become sad. It's better to tell him that we love each other, and I still have a place for him in my heart. Marie, you know I love you, but think about it. You have no place for it except in the landfill. You move on. As for me, Dad said that if I have sex with a married woman again, he will deprive me of that part that you are so used to. She laughed. Dickie, your dad will never touch you. Don't fool yourself. The old man is merciless. It could rob me of my income, or worse, force me to work again for a couple of hours here and there. Besides, you need to look poor so you can take all of the accountant's money. Oh, Dickie, of course not. It's bad enough that I'm leaving him. You have a lot of money. I'm sure we can leave him his money, if not his pride. No, we can't. I want everything. If you want to be with me, you have to show me this. Stomp on him so that he hates you, then I won't have to worry about you weakening when your kids want to go back to Daddy. We have 2 children. Claire, our oldest, is 7, and Bob's youngest, Bobby, is 18 months old. You are consistent, I admit that to you. Okay, when he comes, I'll tell him everything. They continued to talk, and I realized that tears were streaming down my cheeks, and I was barely able to stop myself from bursting into tears. I was still recording, but I could no longer listen to the woman I love calmly discuss how to destroy me personally and financially just to prove a point. It became quiet. Apparently, they had moved on from their conversation to other matters. I decided it was time to leave and called Ben and Nancy. I left unnoticed. One of my longtime clients was my friend, Edwin Dover. Ed and his wife ran a family law firm that prospered. His wife, Sally, practiced under her maiden name, Joyette. As a joke, they nicknamed themselves Ben and Nancy. When I first asked why, she said without smiling, it was a good name for a family law firm, Ben Dover and N. Joyette. Ed and I work with several of his clients whose personal wealth requires both legal and financial planning. It is not uncommon at this time of year for one of them to forget some important element of their plan and need urgent help. I called Ed and briefly explained that I was beside myself and needed their help. Bob, here's what we'll do. I'm busy for a while, but Sally will be free. Come to our house, she will meet you there. I'll call Marie. If she answers, I'll tell her that a big client has a big problem and you're all in on it. You can call her back tomorrow and let her know when you're home. I was grateful for such good friends. Without going into details, they accepted me immediately. When I arrived at their place, Sally greeted me with a hug. She wanted to know what happened. I said only one word, Marie, and began to sob like a fool. She squinted and looked into my eyes. Disease, pause, I was silent. Betrayal, tears. This bitch, Ed will be here in less than an hour. Let's see if we can have 2 large martinis before he arrives. Nothing to do before that. I hate mixing martinis and betrayal. That's what we did. She was a great conversationalist. She didn't pull me out of my funk, but thanks to her charm, wit, and half a liter of gin, by the time Ed arrived, I was no longer crying. Hey, you two, what's going on here? The bitch betrayed him. Bitch. Well, let's see what we can do to ruin her life more than she ruined his. It made me feel better. I took out my phone and started recording. When it ended, I said, I have 2 thoughts. First, use this in court, and then send it to my father. We'll burn this bastard. Ed and Sally looked at each other and seemed to exchange invisible thoughts. She nodded and turned to me. Bob, you're new to this. Everything is not done as it may seem. At least in a case like this, if you want to win, you shouldn't act directly. Ed, tell him about the tape and your father. You know Richard Jr. a little, don't you? Isn't he your landlord? Well, yeah, but I don't write rent checks, and he doesn't get them. Other people do all this. Junior, as he likes to call himself, inherited a considerable sum, but early acquired a taste for money. Almost everything he does is about getting richer. He's a ruthless bastard. He has a difficult relationship with his son, but Dickie is his real weakness. He spent fortunes getting this useless fool out of one scrape after another. For a while he forced Dickie to work, but it turned out that Dickie had even more talent than his father. If his father's talent is to make money, then Dickie's talent is to lose it. Junior could not keep him at work, so in fact he contributed to his depraved lifestyle. It cost him a lot, but not as much as his idiot son's failed business ideas. Oh my God, Ed, he doesn't want to know the family history. He wants to know if he can give the tape to the younger one. Of course not. Junior will kick Dickie's ass, but will destroy you for pointing out that his son is an idiot. You heard it yourself. Dickie wants Marie to take all your money. She and Dickie would have spent it in a matter of weeks or months. When Marie needs money again, Junior will not help her. Dickie is a bad guy, a type that attracts some women. In addition, as they say, he is very gifted, with air quotes, and skilled in bed. His reputation and lovemaking skills lead to him having many married women. He uses them until he gets bored and they go bankrupt. Then he asks the younger man for money and moves on. The younger one will help his son. On the other hand, Marie will be left penniless and without a home. She will be forced to move to another planet to escape Junior's wrath. In the eyes of a father, the blame for ruined lives will not fall on his sweet son, but on your bitchy ex-wife. In this sense, you are lucky. This story will end very, very badly for her. But for now, we need to find a way for you and the children to survive this approaching Armageddon. I heard the phrase, "the blood froze in my veins," and thought it was a metaphor. But suddenly I felt a trembling. Everything was worse than I thought, but it was still just beginning. What if I sneak out tomorrow morning, take the kids, and disappear? Sally grinned. Great idea if you can actually disappear. I mean completely, without a trace, forever. Otherwise, it's a very bad idea. I could buy fake documents. Ed suggested, Junior will spend about 30 seconds to find whoever produced your documents. You are deceiving yourself. Nothing you do will remain unclear to him. The only way to avoid his wrath is to get him to agree not to retaliate. There is a way out, but sometimes it's painful to get to it. Our goal is to minimize the initial pain and make sure you come out a winner in the end. Sally noticed the pain in my face and stopped the attack. That's enough for today. Give me your phone. Tomorrow you will buy a new one, preferably the same one. We'll keep this phone so we have the original recording and Junior can't steal it. Your only task for tomorrow is to return home and be surprised when you hear. We need to talk. We had a delicious dinner, they put me up for the night, and we went to bed quite early. I didn't sleep well. My Pearl Harbor was no longer a surprise attack. All day I was like a cat with a long tail in a room full of swinging chairs. Everything at work scared me. Several people asked if I was okay. It was hard to say yes for now and not admit that my world was about to explode. I drove home, pulled into the garage, took a deep breath, exhaled, and entered the house as usual, announcing, "Honey, I'm home." A voice came from the dining room. "Here." I sighed quietly, my last opportunity to admit to myself that I knew what was happening, and entered the dining room. "This is unusual. What happened?" "Sit down. We need to talk." Damn it. Sit down, as if I were some kind of stray dog. No name, no greeting. Although I was prepared, emotions began to rise. I decided to sit down without saying a word. "Bob, as you well know, Something has been wrong between us for a long time. I decided to file for divorce. The coldness of her words was combined with an icy expression on her face. She clearly rehearsed carefully. I took out my new phone, pressed a record, and placed it on the table next to me. I don't quite understand. I didn't know there was anything wrong between us. Why are you filing for divorce? What is this? My phone? Not a phone, idiot. What are you doing? Jerk. You rarely cursed and never called me names. See, this is how it got to this point. You lie and make me look bad. There are no records of our quarrels, your insults, and my smile when I endure all this. And now you play the tape to make me look like a villain. Turn it off or the conversation is over. I won't turn it off. Then get out. I'm not going to leave. This is also my home. Why can't we talk? You asked me to sit down and talk. Why don't you want to do this? Turn off your recording and listen to what I have to say, or get out. These are your two options. Well, to be polite, I have to tell you that I'm taking the third option. Sit down and wait for you to tell me what's going on with my recording. As you wish. She got up and left. I remained sitting there in complete shock. Who is this woman? There was not a drop of emotion, no warmth, only a cold look and ultimatums. I was even more intimidated by the fact that she was ready for me to record and refused in advance when I did. I thought about it. I felt a tear rolling down my cheek and wiped it away. She returned to her chair. "What a beauty," she said, sitting down again. "What exactly is beauty, if you can find out?" "Tears. After everything you've done, you have the nerve to fake tears." "Marie, talk to me, darling. I don't understand what's going on. I come home and you suddenly announce that you want a divorce and are surprised that I have tears in my eyes. What's wrong? Why can't we discuss it? The kids and I are in danger when you act like this. And now you even record our conversations to look normal, and I look like a villain. I won't stand for this. Your violence must stop." I just sat and looked at her with my mouth open. How could she be so well prepared? She was now using my recording to her advantage, and I was very tempted to turn her off. But I knew that Ben and Nancy would treat me much harsher than Marie if I did this. I left the recording on. We just looked at each other in silence. I heard police sirens. A moment later, the doors swung open and two officers entered the cafeteria with tasers in their hands. "Sir, calm down. I'm sitting at the dinner table. What can I do to appear calmer?" "Don't resist, sir. Stand up and put your hands behind your back." I quickly decided that resistance would accomplish nothing. I stood up and turned my back to them, holding out my hands to them. To my surprise, I was handcuffed. I asked, "May I know what's the matter?" "We received a 911 call saying your wife was afraid for her safety. We are responding to this challenge. We're going to take you outside to let you cool down and talk to each of you individually." They led me to the door. Both officers walked on either side of me, leaving Marie alone at the table. "Wait," I said. "I need my phone." "Where is your phone, sir?" asked the policewoman. "On the dining table." She turned around and returned to the dining room. Another officer took me outside to sit on the veranda. After a few seconds, the woman came out and told her partner, "There was no phone there. My wife says she has no idea what he's talking about." She turned around and went back into the house. "Now we have a few questions for you. First, let me ask, are you calm enough for me to remove the handcuffs?" "Officer, at the risk of appearing intractable, I left the phone on the dining table. My wife unexpectedly announced today that we have a breakdown in our relationship and that she is filing for divorce. For 9 years, we have not had a single conflict. I was completely shocked, so I turned on the recording of our conversation. She was indignant, told me to turn off the recording. I refused. She left for a minute and then returned. I assume she called you at that moment. Now I am accused of violence, and I can refute this if you find my phone number. Stand up and turn your back to me." I did just that. He opened one of the handcuffs and invited me to sit on a swing suspended by chains from the ceiling. He fastened the open part of the handcuffs to the chain so I couldn't escape. "I'll go find your phone." He left. I didn't time it, but at least 15 minutes passed. We thoroughly examined the house and did not find the phone. We called your number, but no one answered. Then my partner asked if you have find my phone turned on your phone. My wife said yes, she found her phone, and we found your phone in a house across town. Your wife said you were working there last night. I thought she might have put the phone in her coffee cup. Sometimes people don't notice the obvious. Crap. My old phone showed up on the map, which meant that if I insisted that she had my phone, I would have to admit that I knew about her intention to divorce. This wouldn't be the best move, or at least that's what I thought. I decided to give up looking for a phone. "Sir, do you admit that there was no telephone here?" "No, officer, I don't admit it. I can't explain what happened. I had the phone and I recorded our conversation. Marie didn't go out anywhere, so the phone must be somewhere nearby. Can you explain why your phone signal was picked up in another part of town?" "I can't offer any explanation yet." "Then we will assume that there was no phone and your statement is false." "My statement is not false. I don't refuse a single word." "Very good. How do you respond to accusations that you are becoming increasingly violent towards your wife?" "I categorically deny this." "You were out all last night. Have you cheated on your wife?" "Absolutely not. I was with 2 lawyers handling cases." "Do you wish to name what kind of deeds?" "Unfortunately, I cannot disclose this information." "We will contact these lawyers." "That suits me. Everything I have said or will say is absolutely true. I have nothing to hide." "Well, you said the phone was here, but it's not. You said that you were busy with business, but you can't explain what kind of business it was. So your honesty does not inspire confidence yet." His partner appeared on the threshold. He checked to see if I was freed from the handcuffs and entered the house again. He wasn't gone long. "We are taking you to the station to process your arrest." "May I know what I am accused of?" "In domestic conflict and assault." He read me my rights, my damn rights. I was taken to a building, fingerprinted, photographed, and thrown into a cell. They allowed me to make one call. I called Ben and Nancy. Didn't get through, left a message, and was informed that that's all I'm entitled to. I was placed in some kind of pre-trial detention cell for a day and a half. Food was offered 3 times. I accepted it only once. I hardly slept and was glad when I heard my name called. I walked to the door and was escorted to a smiling Sally. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Yes, everything is fine. Come with me." She was serious. We walked quickly and soon found ourselves in the office. She burst into the office, and the officer who was there was clearly not happy to see her. "Don't you know how to knock? Don't you dare insult me just because I'm a woman. I'm here to file criminal complaints and to notify you that my client is going to file a $3 million lawsuit against the city. I demand that the 2 officers who arrested him be suspended without pay. They abuse their power, are irresponsible, incompetent, and pose a danger to society." "Miss Joyette, if I may." "You can't," she answered sharply. She turned to me and gently asked me to sit down. Then she took out some forms and started filling them out. Several times she asked me to sign, and I did. When we left, I started to ask what was going on, but she raised her hand, and I realized that I needed to be silent and just follow her. Many people say that "we need to talk" was the beginning of the worst days of their lives. These people didn't know what I was going through. Something has changed. Sally suddenly went from being a reluctant participant to a fierce enemy. I was again at my friend's house. If we talk about my first meeting with my wife after her application for divorce, then no one in history probably suffered more than me. She said we needed to talk, but she didn't agree to anything other than false accusations and refused to talk. If this was my life now, I wasn't sure I could bear it. "Bob, you may not think so, but we've been a huge success," Sally said. "Well," I replied, realizing that she was full of enthusiasm. If it was a success, then I can't imagine what will happen when we lose. Ed continued. You shouldn't have been arrested. I assume one or both of the officers know Dickie, or at least have heard of the younger one and have tried to please them. But they made a huge mistake. All this had a strange background, and the duty sergeant suspected something was wrong. He called me about his missing phone. He managed to get a warrant and find the phone. It was in the trash can, drowned in coffee. Marie claims that you threw him there. We're lucky she didn't take the phone out of the house, Sally continued. It took them a while to get a warrant, and they only conducted a search this morning. We don't know for sure, but it doesn't look like Junior is involved yet. If he was involved, they wouldn't have gotten the warrant in time. The phone would have been destroyed, lost somewhere in a huge pile of ash. Ed continued. This is just the beginning. I'm afraid that now the younger one will definitely interfere. We were forced to take several steps to prove the false arrest. The most unpleasant of them was the playback of your first recording to Judge Marin. I thought you said showing the tape to the judge was a bad idea. Well, I don't remember exactly what we told you, but something like that. Nothing is done directly in these matters. Why is my idea to show the recording to the judge a mistake, and yours is a good decision? We needed to understand what kind of person Marie is. I thought you and her made a great couple, but she turned out to be not only evil, but also very skillful in her deceit. Dickie has a reputation as a seducer, but she has become your worst enemy. Do you have any idea why? It's always difficult for us during tax season. I have work and clients all year round who need help. But from the end of January to mid-April, I earn almost half of all my fees. I work and sleep, that's all. I understand that I need to eat, but I do it while sitting at my desk. Bob, you're looking at the situation wrong. Sally almost poked me in the chest with her finger. Yes, you have a difficult quarter of the year, but this is a reason for boredom, perhaps for some kind of hobby on the side. But what this woman is doing is the behavior of a person who hates you. Why? We decided that Marie would stop working while our children were small. Our 7-year-old daughter Claire was born immediately after our wedding. We were already desperate to have a second child, and then Bob Jr. was born. He is now about 18 months old. Marie expected to stay at home for 5 or 6 years, but now it's turning into 10 or 12, and it worries her. Bob, there's something more here, and you know it, Sally insisted. Marie has always been fascinated by Dickie and others like him, men who can afford to lead a carefree and frivolous life. She once told me that accountants have neither spontaneity nor ease in their lives. I joked that in my profession, spontaneity could be a criminal offense. I thought it was funny, but she wasn't happy. Now it was Ed's turn. Bob, this sounds like a wife who has been looking for a reason for a long time. Did you have any signals? Signals? No, but I guess I never paid attention to it. Marie is 6 years younger than me. We were a bit of an odd couple at first. She was looking for the right husband, and I was already successful. But strangely enough, we got along. She was the spirit of our family, and I was her rock. We worked together. But judging by what is happening now, a curious person would suspect something was wrong. Suspected what, specifically? Sally clarified. She always said that she wanted the right house, the right schools, everything had to be perfect. She says she wants to work, but her language arts degree doesn't give her many opportunities, especially here. She says a lot of things, but I don't see any action. But she always makes sure that we go to the right parties, meet the right people, and so on. The right parties and the right people aren't that bad. Connecting with the best people in town must be good for business. Sally continued to dig, clearly realizing that I was not seeing the full picture. Well, for her, necessary parties are parties with Dickie and his entourage. And she flirts with all men. Ed looked at me with suspicion. Not really, but she is very sociable, friendly, and our social organizer. I just sit and wonder. We laughed about it, at least before. Now, thinking back, this became a problem at the New Year's ball. People in this inner circle, including Dickie, used some substances. Marie assured me that there was nothing illegal about it. Okay, I hope you don't think I should be ashamed. I know everything I need to know about illegal substances. To be honest, I admit that I am a complete nerd in this matter. I lived a quiet, ideal life, or at least that's what I thought. But maybe not everything Marie would like you to know, Ed said, frowning. People think that because they are drugs, they are legal, but that is only if a doctor prescribes them. We need to start digging, Sally made notes to herself. If she takes something, your children are in danger. Well, now our picture has become a little clearer. Your wife has clearly moved from boredom to, at the very least, sensation-seeking. Of that we can be fairly sure. Changes in behavior and impaired judgment are common with the use of illicit substances. This got me very excited, and I said, I know one thing for sure, Marie can be very vindictive. If Dickie convinced her that I was the enemy, then she would attack me with fury. I think that's what I saw when I met her. Sally looked at Ed. That's exactly what Dickie does. I know this for sure. He convinces his victim's wife's friends that their husband is cheating. I don't know exactly how, but he does it. And then he himself enters the game. He has an excellent reputation. Women seem to enjoy being loved by him, but until now he has always quickly lost interest and moved on. And Junior, as always, is cleaning up the consequences. Ed turned to me. If you talk to her friends, try to find out if they think she has a reason to be unhappy with you. But unfortunately, this no longer matters much. We brought Junior into the game, and now it's war. Sally laughed, shaking her head. This is probably the first time this has happened. A wife says to her husband, we need to talk. They never talked, but complete chaos still broke out. Sorry, but you still haven't explained to me why you played the recording for the judge, I said. Marie claims that you are prone to violence, that you're cheating on her, that you are a danger to her children, and until your phone was found, it supported her story. We decided it would be best to release the tape to cast doubt on her accusations and show that you are, in fact, the injured party in this situation. It was a risky step, but we did it. Why was this a risky step? The judges here are all friends with Junior, and now he has found out that his stupid son is recorded with another passion, discussing how to destroy you. Junior knows that Dickie will ruin everything. And now he will try to get ahead of events, destroy you, let Dickie have some fun, and then get rid of Marie when his son gets tired of her, and will wait for the next affair. It was a risky move because by starting to make you a good guy so early, we started the war before we were ready for it. Fortunately, we have a strong case against the city. They will pay you a decent amount, and this will be useful to you and not only to protect yourself from the wrath of the younger. It was Monday, the beginning of a new week, a chance for the best. I was still living with Ed and Sally, my friends and lawyers. They had a separate guest area in their house. The door from their living room led into a small office. From there was an exit to the hall, from which you could go outside, enter the bedroom or the large bathroom. The bedroom was spacious and had a closet with a coffee maker, microwave, and small refrigerator. I could be in this room and not go into the main part of the house. As they told me, I will have to contact them often. I arrived at work 5 minutes before 9. At exactly 9 o'clock, I was called to the door. It was a court courier from Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, Junior's favorite law firm. He had a stack of large envelopes. He said I needed to sign for each one. 1 minute, please, I said and pressed speed dial number 1. Ed picked up the phone. Ed, there's a court courier with a bunch of envelopes. He wants me to sign for everything. Ed asked to put it on speakerphone, and I did it. My name is Ed Dover. I am Mr. Watson's lawyer. Could you please introduce yourself? My name is Ralph. Just Ralph, said the courier. Ralph, my client does not have sufficient legal knowledge to sign these documents. Therefore, our legal system provides a procedure for the formal service of legal papers. You have your responsibilities, and I assume you are familiar with them. My client has no responsibilities at this time, as he is not a party to any legal proceedings. If you want to serve him the documents, do so. He has no responsibilities in this process. I was told to get signatures. Ralph, hand the documents to my client or leave. Your choice. The courier looked arrogant and said, I will note that your client refused to sign. I'm leaving. Thank you, Ralph. Have a nice day. Ralph turned around and left. As soon as he left, I said, Ed, he didn't leave anything. Bob, I've been involved in a lot of litigation, but I've never seen anything like this. Did you notice what was on his list? Yes, one of the points was claim. The first two documents were some kind of notification. I don't remember exactly. There were also questionnaires, it seems, more than one, if I saw correctly. What are they even doing? There is a clear procedure in court proceedings. First, a claim is filed. It sets out the reason and justification for the claims. We respond to the lawsuit by admitting or denying their allegations. If one of the parties needs to gather information to defend its position, it requests documents. The judge grants or denies this request. Only then do things like questions or petitions begin. Someone here has clearly lost control of the situation. Looks like it was Dickie's doing. Later, at the end of the workday, I called Ed again. Another courier came to me, this time with one document. He waited outside the office. Ed asked me to invite him inside. The man asked if I was Bob Watson, and after I answered in the affirmative, he handed me an envelope and told me that I was officially notified. Then he left. Bob, this is how it should happen, Ed commented. Although I must say that I called Ron Howe and asked to be listed as your lawyer. He asked me to confirm this by letter, which I did by sending a courier. Despite this, they still handed the documents to you. I hate to say it, but you have a real mess on your hands. My beloved wife hates me, her lover wants to destroy me, and his powerful father will destroy everyone in his path. What's the problem? I answered sarcastically. Bob, I can't tell you what a circus it was this morning. Even a first-year law student, let alone a lawyer, would not have done this. Even a courier wouldn't behave like that. No, it was Dickie showing his smugness and incompetence. I can only think of two reasons for this. Firstly, Dickie is trying to impress his father, to prove that he is in the game. And you may ask why anyone would prove their participation by doing such a stupid thing. I'll tell you it's Dickie. He's a disaster. Everything he touches turns into chaos. Secondly, it is more likely that Junior heard from the judge about the recording and asked his son what was going on. Dickie explained and asked his father for help. He refused, and then Dickie ruined everything on purpose to force the old man to intervene. This scared me. If Junior now doesn't cover Dickie's tracks, but instead leads a campaign against me, that's very, very serious. Bob, I can't tell you how serious this is, but I can say one thing for sure. Dickie's involvement may be your biggest ally when this is all over. You read stories about how a betrayed former Navy SEAL husband exacts revenge on biblical proportions. The man comes out of this battle unscathed, and all the bad people are left behind, barely alive. I'm not someone who was there. I'm an accountant. I can only refuse to fill out their tax returns, but I didn't fill them out. Everything looked even more gloomy. I received a message from Marie. We need to talk. Something inside told me to ignore this message. But the voice was not loud enough, and I wrote back, of course, where and when. Her answer infuriated me. This has gone too far. My lawyer says I can't talk to you without her presence. Then we can't talk. Thank you for reminding me. She kept texting me, and I forwarded them all to Sally. I think I'm learning too slowly. I still trust my wife. I know she can't be trusted, but I won't let go. I won't stop. I would say that I still love her if it weren't for the conversation I overheard. But she is clearly waging war against me. Why? Well, many people find themselves in the same situation as me, and they are not senior tax professionals at a large accounting firm. They don't have the same resources as I do. They don't have lawyer friends. I continued to think. Even though I was a senior tax professional in a large accounting firm with significant resources, I realized that I could not rely on my friends Ed and Sally forever. Living with them, even in a separate guest area, was not part of my long-term plans. After all, they didn't take me in as their foster child. I decided to start looking for a suitable apartment or condominium that my firm could use to house good clients after I moved out myself. That way I could make it a tax deduction as a business expense. I quickly found a suitable option, but I soon discovered that all my assets were frozen. This meant more work for Ed and Sally, and their Ben Dover and Anjoyette jokes became less funny every day. I was shocked. I was approached by the CEO of our company, with whom I am friendly, but we are not friends. He said he heard that I was getting a divorce and looking for an apartment. He noted that this could be beneficial for the company and asked me to let him know if I found anything. He was confident that he could convince our board of directors to buy the property and rent it to me for a certain period of time. I was shocked that my divorce and housing search was so widely known, but as they say, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right? Before I had time to look back, we already had an apartment, which cost me almost nothing. Life was getting better. Ed called me. We met with Marie and her lawyer. The good life now came in short bursts. Ed and Sally both decided to attend this first meeting. We still found ourselves in the minority. Marie sat in the middle of a small army of people who, at least to me, didn't really introduce themselves. It was an absolutely futile spectacle on the other side of the table. The queen, her lords and ladies, footmen, and other servants. Marie looked at me and said, "Sorry about that, about all this formality. I really wanted to talk to you." She was interrupted by a somber woman who could easily work in a funeral home with her general affability. "Marie, let me speak." She began her claim and explained her reasons. She was not only bad in appearance, but in reality she turned out to be even worse. I sank lower and lower in my chair. In my head, I figured she was talking about having to pay all the legal fees, and the people in the room were costing at least $2,800 an hour total. That's $30 a minute. I straightened up, hoping she would get to the point faster. If you have never attended a legal proceeding, I highly recommend doing everything you can to avoid it. Lawyers speak their own language, which is completely incomprehensible to those who are forced to pay for all this representation. I tuned in again when I heard her mention the expression in flagrante delicto, referring to me. Like I said, the tongue felt weird, but I knew it had something to do with the fact that I didn't keep my fly zipped up. We have photographs. I'm ready to show you a few today. The first photo is of an attractive young woman sitting at a table for two. I recognized her as Rebecca Carter, a client with whom I had dinner, but not in this restaurant and not alone. As a matter of principle, I never dined alone with clients. The next photo was of the two of us at the same table, and she was looking at me. I wondered how it was done. The second photo was real. I was almost sure of it. She didn't show the table, but our position was the same as the two seats at the table in the previous photo. Together, they made it feel like we were at an intimate dinner together. There were more photos. We left the restaurant holding hands. Then in the elevator, in hugs and hot kisses. You couldn't always see my face, but my jacket was tweed, which is a pretty rare choice. And when the face was not completely visible, the clothes made it obvious that it was me. It's worth noting that Miss Carter was a new client who wanted me to be her consultant, and could only meet for dinner. She was a fake. Everything was done very skillfully. There was a photo of our crying baby. I tried to calm him down, but it was claimed that he was crying because I hit him. One photo didn't prove anything, but stacked up it looked pretty convincing. Next we moved on to finances. Being an accountant, I had everything well documented. There was a fairly large account in my name, which was a temporary account for transferring money to our pension funds for the education of children, and so on. I wrote up a detailed description of the use of this account and suggested that her name be included there. Marie and I reviewed this description, and I left her a copy. She stated that she did not see him. We took a break. One of the servants offered a conference room for Ed so we could talk privately. Ed said loudly, "You are so kind, you think about everything. We are so grateful. Can I watch it?" As they left, Sally said, "Ed must suspect the room is bugged. When we sit there, he will ask you questions. They will not be for us, but for them. Hesitate when you answer. Make it seem like you don't know exactly what to say. Don't lie. They know what they showed is not what it seems. If you say too much, they'll know you're lying. Once we were in the room, Ed started a tirade about how I was allegedly having a relationship with a woman. I stumbled and stuttered and said it's not what it seems. He said he didn't want to listen to it. How did I expect them to protect me? In the midst of his tirade, he looked at his watch, lowered his emotions, and said that it was time for us to return to the group. As we were walking back, I said to Sally, I was trying to be so careful, and then Ed did this. Did what? She asked with obvious curiosity. I was so emotional, then I looked at my watch, calmed down, and we went back. Oh my God, Bob, you're new to this. His emotions were for show, and they know it. All the world's a stage, if you remember Shakespeare. He played his role, you played yours. But he just turned it off. I still didn't understand. Because when we come back, we'll just have to sit back and look at the other side. He can't come back with a red face and heavy breathing. In this process, you are obligated to behave, but we are not. Don't try to analyze why we do things, otherwise you'll go crazy. From this point on, the meeting was very brief. Ed asked a few procedural questions, then Sally launched into her own tirade. She said it was the biggest, most overblown, false accusation she had ever seen. There was no point in continuing the conversation with people who were no more honest than those sitting opposite. I noticed that Sally was glaring at the lead opposing counsel, and Ed was watching Marie impassively. They were an amazing team. Marie announced that she was tired of all this, she was tired of them, and we were leaving. We left. The second time Marie said we needed to talk, but it never happened. The three of us discussed everything in their offices. It seemed that Marie was the key figure. She was aloof and barely participated in the discussion throughout the meeting. Ed began, I've known her since you two started dating. She smiled at me the way you smile at someone you see in passing on the street, and then she never looked at me again. Of the 8 people on her side of the table, she showed the least interest and showed the least emotion. I saw how you were watching her when Sally was going through her tirade at the end. What do you think? Asked Sally. Well, that was the worst moment. I looked at you first, and unsurprisingly, you were looking right at her, so I saw how she took it. It was just curious. She scanned the room, not showing much interest in anything. She did look at you, but with the same interest as she looked at me, or Sally for that matter. I think she might be on some kind of drug. You saw her and Dickie once. What did they look like? Asked Sally. Sally, I didn't actually see them. They were a few feet away from me, but in the house, and I was outside, listening through the window. And what? Same question. They talked about being together. No, this is wrong. They were already together. I was already in the past tense. She begged him to leave me some money, but he said no, and she didn't object. She also wanted him to be there, but he didn't think it was wise. He said that the younger one has problems with him and with married women. I asked people, no one sees them in his usual places. In fact, no one sees him in the same places. Ed was clearly nervous. Oh, Ed, for God's sake, tell me what you think. Don't make him beg. Sally was alarmed. It all looks like Dickie has fallen in love. If this is true, the situation is completely different from the one we described. This was not a team assembled to get rid of her husband. It was a group created to help the woman find the freedom he wants to marry. Sally looked like she had won the lottery. Oh, you're right. She was like an indifferent passenger on some flight to nowhere. I was nervous and took a couple of sedatives so as not to worry. She could do it because she didn't have a real role. She just drove until she was told to get out. For some reason, this made me feel sad. I'm not afraid to admit that it's getting me down. I think I already understood this, but now it became more real. Divorcing her because she cheats, and I don't want her, is almost acceptable. The realization that she is so far gone that I am not even a thought in her past hurts. You know that for us, you are more than a client. Get yourself involved in the work. Sally turned to me and began to look intently into my eyes. We know that you want to see your children. We know that you are innocent. And we know what a cruel son of a bitch the younger one is. There will be some bad months. You don't deserve them, but unfortunately they will come. Move away. It's a little cold, honey. Ed leaned towards me as well. But she's right. Is this your client, Carter? Was that her name? When we take her testimony, it will be disappointing. She'll have some line that isn't entirely true, but is clever enough that we won't be able to catch her in a lie. She will talk about you as an almost affair. We'll sully your name without saying anything specific. Sally chimed in, Ed, you know our main concern is Marie. She turned to me. Bob, will Marie lie about you? Will she say that she is afraid for her safety and the safety of her children around you? We can only hope not. But, as I said, she can be extremely vindictive. If Dickie convinced her that I was unfaithful, then it doesn't matter if my client tells the absolute truth. Think about it. They were told I was spotted, but they have no proof. They took some stupid photos just to illustrate their point. They don't need to convince the court, they need to convince her. If they did, she might want to burn me because I deserve it. Ed leaned back and sagged in his chair. I accused her of being cold. This is bad news. If Dickie is in love and is going to marry her, Junior will have to get you out of the way. If she hesitated and wanted to return, he had already made sure that there was nowhere to return. This is bad news. I guess you think this is bad news. I tried to laugh, but it caught in my throat. What should I expect? It was Sally's turn. Nothing will be ruled out except physical harm. He will do anything to ruin your life, deprive you of your income and ability to enjoy life in the area. If you're afraid of it and he can imagine it, he'll do it. Will you protect me? Ed looked serious. We will do our best. Stick to this thought no matter what. Dickie will fail this. He won't be able to resist. I don't know how or when, but believe me, he will definitely make a mistake. Amazing. So when I end up living in some homeless shelter in Topeka, I can take comfort in the fact that it's only a matter of time. I lived in a nice apartment, but without access to my home and children. I was allowed to visit them under supervision every 2 Saturdays. I couldn't tell which of these beautiful children was the hardest for me to lose touch with. Claire was smart and so charming. She was about to become a young girl, and I was missing out on that. Bobby had barely started walking and was not talking when I left home. I missed the moment when he turned from a helpless baby into a small child. It tore my heart. I've already been to court 3 times trying to get joint custody. I thought Ed was doing a good job, but he was held back by morals and ethics. Marie's lawyers did not suffer from such principles. They argued that a quick divorce resolution was the key to justice. They said that, unfortunately, in this case I was deliberately delaying the process, but of course, the children should not be at risk because of my delaying tactics. Ed stood up and explained to the judge that I was not interested in dragging out the divorce, but was simply trying to reach an acceptable custody agreement. Marie challenges my suitability as a father, and it is because of her that we are experiencing delays. Ed pointed out that their arguments were completely self-contained. Marie, without providing evidence, claims that I am an unsuitable father. I dispute this assertion. The plaintiff, she was the plaintiff, apparently uses her own statement as evidence and gets an expert opinion based on the empty statement that I am a bad father. And now they are using this expert's opinion as the basis for their accusations. I am amazed by lawyers. When they are caught in an obvious lie, they smile and come up with some other plausible explanation for why the lie might not be a lie. They don't say it's true, but they say it might be true. In this case, they argued that how could Ed and I know what the expert was thinking? Just because it seems to us that the only basis for his conclusions was Marie's complaints, this does not make them a fact. Ed said he would be happy to interview an expert to prove our arguments right and wrong. Marie's lawyers said they would gladly agree to question the expert and will do everything possible to ensure this happens as soon as possible. Their understanding of as soon as possible meant 2 weeks after the end of time. In the end, we interviewed the expert and proved that their claims had no basis. It was an unconditional victory. Of course, by that time they already had two other experts who, as far as we could tell, were based on the opinion of the first expert and also considered me a bad father. Ed couldn't stand it and said it was all the same again. Marie's lawyers said it was not the same at all. The first expert was based on complaints, and this is clearly not the case. Ed, of course, pointed out that this time the experts' opinions were based on a previous opinion that had already been found to be baseless. The judge began to lose patience. He said that if the interrogations showed that Ed was right, he would rule in my favor. They smiled and assured that this would not happen and vowed that they would make both experts available as soon as possible. I sat in the hall. To say "in cheap seats" would be a lie because there was nothing cheap about it. It was obvious that they were finding ways to increase legal costs. In my opinion, they were damn good at it. Summer has flown by. One of the experts unexpectedly went on vacation for 2 months and was unavailable for questioning. Marie's lawyers, realizing they were in trouble, requested a meeting with the judge. At this meeting, they swore that they forgot to ask about their long-planned European vacation. Now they are ready to let the results of the divorce trial, scheduled for early October, decide everything. Ed reprimanded the opposing attorneys and reminded the judge that if they couldn't prove I was unfit, the judge would have to award joint custody. The judge agreed. He said that as of September 12th, I would be given custody every Wednesday from noon to 8 p.m., as well as alternate weekends without supervision. By mid-September, we had our first victory, albeit partial. I was in seventh heaven. They didn't stop. Even though I haven't had cancer, I'd say it's about the same. One morning you wake up, and everything that seemed self-evident to you suddenly turns into a question. Nothing feels right, no situation makes you feel safe. I learned as I went. Interrogations, document requests, affidavits. I signed some documents, not always understanding what and why I was signing. I grinned. Right above my signature were the words, "There is nothing more to add to what has been said." I'm an accountant. It's simple. Add up the numbers and take a percentage of them. There is no nonsense in accounting. Does this hint that it is in the law? I'm not saying this. I had another ace up my sleeve. I was wrongfully arrested, and Sally assured me that the city would pay for it. The payout will be large enough to cover mounting legal costs. One morning, Sally called me while I was at work. We were in the second month of the discovery process. The city has financial problems. Someone agreed to buy some bonds on one condition. He would have the exclusive right to decide any settlement of my false arrest claim. Fortunately, the city attorney handling the case was quite young, and she was offended by this. "Sally, I'm sorry she's offended. Obviously, this means that I won't see a settlement, or that I won't get one anytime soon." Well, yes, this is bad news, but there is also a plus. This hurt her so much that she decided to take a few steps. It turned out that this benefactor is a junior, and his motive is to prevent you from receiving the money. So we can prosecute him. No, it's unofficial, but we have an ally. This might come in handy. Do you accept useful as payment? Don't worry about paying for now. Right, bye, I said with as much sarcasm as I dared. You can't imagine how quickly a good life can turn into hell. It was Friday, September 27th. The approaching winter was already felt in the autumn air. I was surprised that our CEO and owner of the company called a meeting with 5 of his key people. What surprised me even more was that he sold the company, and the only significant change was that I no longer had a job. He announced this to the 6 of us sitting in his conference room. A tear came out of my eye in shock. I started to speak, but he raised his hand, indicating that it was better for me to remain silent. Then he released the others. I remain in my position. Nothing has changed except that I got a lot of money, and you are left without a job. It's not the most civilized thing to do, but what can I say? That's what I did. Oh, by the way, since you no longer work for the company, you must vacate your apartment by the 30th. You bastard. Bob, I've already said too much. You were an at-will employee, and I am free to fire you. I had to gather the group and announce your departure. I had to do this today and told you to move out of the apartment by Monday. Everything is done. Sorry. Leave. No settlement, no job, no company car, no housing. From the top of society to the bottom in one easy step. I called Ed. It turned out that my phone was turned off. Well, I didn't have a job, so I had plenty of free time. I could walk to their office. I walked a couple of blocks, and it started to rain coldly. I looked up and said, "And you're going there too?" I was cold, wet, and desperate when I arrived at the Dover and Joyette office. Both partners were at the meeting, but I was assured that I would have to wait no more than a few minutes. Ed and I aren't much different in size, and they brought me a sweater, sweatpants, and underwear to change into while I waited. I had just changed my clothes when Sally came up to me asking what happened. I explained everything. She said, "He is ruthless. I'm afraid that this is not all, but I can't imagine what else could be." They turned off my phone. The bill was on both of us. I don't know how they pulled it off. I need this phone. Through it, I am connected to our home network. This is the only way to see your children. If I don't have it, I'll just lose it. Sally found my cameraman and disappeared. She was gone for almost an hour. When she returned, she said, "Try your phone." I dialed her number on speed dial, the phone rang, and the connection was restored. I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried like a baby. The trauma, and then this relief, just broke me. Sally sat next to me and hugged me as I sobbed. "You will come to our house today. We will decide what to do next." I couldn't talk to them. I sat in their guest room and looked at my phone. It was just after 8 in the evening. One of the things we did was install a nanny cam with an app that allowed us to keep an eye on our youngest son when my mom and I weren't home. He was sleeping. Then maybe he had a bad dream or something, but he woke up and started crying. He cried for a while, then became louder. This was his only way to call his mother, to cry, then cry louder, and then even louder. I was shocked to see Dickie stagger into the room, cursing at my son. "Calm down, you little bastard. Your mom is a little busy right now." I ran into the living room and yelled to Ed and Sally, "Look at this." By this point, Dickie had already begun to scream, which only intensified the baby's crying. Ed stood up. "Sally, call 911, identify yourself, say that we have witnessed children's rights being violated. A whole detachment needs to arrive there urgently." He looked at me. "Bob, we're going to your house right now." Our houses were more than half an hour away from each other. Ed told me to call 911 from the car. I think he knew it was unnecessary, but he wanted to keep me occupied while he raced, breaking all the speed limits. When we arrived, there was already an ambulance, a fire truck, 4 police cars, and an army of onlookers at the scene. Ed told me to stay close to him and keep my mouth shut. This surprised me. He said it in such a way that I understood. He would express my indignation himself, and at the same time he would not let me get into trouble. He found the officer in charge of the operation and demanded to know what was going on. After a small skirmish, the officer began to tell everything he knew. When they arrived, no one answered the door, so they had to knock it down. My son was sleeping. Dickie lost consciousness. Marie was tied to the headboard of our bed, completely naked. Both were in custody. The officer wasn't sure what they were taking. The ambulance was about to leave, so I got into the car to make sure my son was okay. I knew Ed would deal with what was left behind. It was a long night. What I experienced was beyond anything I had ever known. Murder and life imprisonment seemed the minimum acceptable punishment at this point. At about 5 in the morning, Sally joined me. She said she wanted to hear everything. So far, I knew little, only that Bobby was resting. Sally had been there for about 20 minutes when a man in a medical gown approached us. "Mr. Watson?" "Yes, it's me, and this is my friend, Sally Joyette." I did not consider it necessary to clarify that she is a lawyer. "My name is Dr. Graham. I have good news. Your boy was given sedatives. It's hard to say exactly how many, but it looks like it wasn't the first time. Mrs. Watson and her friend appeared to be regularly using a sedative drug. We analyze it, but it's mostly prescription drugs. However, they both used illegal substances. That bastard Sally interrupted me by squeezing my wrist tightly. Mr. Watson, we won't talk about other people. She deliberately did this to keep me quiet, and I understood her intention. The doctor smiled slightly and turned to me. You might be interested. It is my understanding that when the police arrived, they were unable to immediately enter the house and forced the door. They said they found an unconscious man and a very sleepy woman who was naked and handcuffed to a bed. According to the police, the incident was reported by a lawyer who moved everyone with her emotional account of the brutal acts. The doctor paused and looked at Sally, who met his gaze with no sign of recognition. Police used bolt cutters to free the woman and then placed her in police handcuffs to take her to the car. They say she was hysterical. Sally grinned like a true lawyer and said, "Dumb woman of easy virtue. If she didn't like the way she was treated, why didn't she say anything?" The doctor looked like he was going to explain to her what a gag was, but then he smiled and said, "Exactly." Ed called Sally, and they talked for a few minutes. Then she handed me the phone. "Ed wants to talk to you." Hello, I didn't have the strength, and I just waited for his words. "Bob, first of all, please accept my condolences. I knew this idiot would ruin everything, but even I didn't think he would go this far. Of course, this does not compensate for everything, but they are now in complete ass. As expected, he hired a lawyer and suddenly does not remember her. She should have married him before he did something like that." I quoted a phrase from some movie. "Imagine how upset I will be if she is given life in the electric chair." He didn't laugh, didn't pause, just continued. "No one should have told me, but like I said, the police hate people who hurt children. One person who was with Dickie and his lawyer before they went full circle said it's your wife. Dickie allegedly did not know what was happening. He simply gave the child his medicine. He is, in fact, a model citizen, they say." What about all Sally's accusations of beating me and her holy innocence? That's what Sally and I discussed. You listen to her and do what she says. Maybe there will be a good ending to all this. I'm guessing you mean something better than a bunk on top of a homeless shelter. I know I can't imagine the trauma you went through, but hold on. They are in a panic and Dickie is about to go to trial. Time is against them. I really listened to Sally. By the way, if Sally wants you to listen to her, she doesn't need Ed to lead the way. Ed is an excellent lawyer and a formidable opponent. Sally scares the crap out of me. Her plan seemed plausible. Things were getting better. It was already 8:30 p.m. when I completed all the points of her plan. Since I no longer had a job, the company took my company car and Sally drove me a block from my apartment. I walked the rest. At least I had 2 more days before eviction. I lay down on the bed without undressing and instantly fell asleep. I woke up from the doorbell and loud knocking on the door. It was 10:05. Even sleeping until 10 did not bring me relief. I tried to laugh at myself. I opened the door. Standing in front of me was an elderly man who resembled a mangy member of the ferret family. "Mr. Bob Watson." "Maybe." "Mr. Watson, may I borrow a minute of your time? I think I have ideas that will help stop this series of failures that are plaguing you and bring you back to the top." I continued to stand in the doorway, blocking his path. "What's your name?" "My name is John Cheatham. I'm a lawyer." "John, my friend, although I was born at night, I was not born last night. This series of failures that haunts me was designed, organized, and implemented by you and your company. I would have thought you were suddenly overcome with guilt, but you are a lawyer. Despite our past, we can help each other now." "Bullshit. You are a mercenary, and I don't know what to call you. I would like to say killer, but they are kinder. They shoot someone and the pain ends. You look more like a student of the Marquis de Sade. By the way, one of his apprentices recently visited my wife." if I may. I won't allow it. I wasn't in Sally's league, but I could use her material. This is how we will do it. Dicks are up to their ears in shit. He faces trial and arraignment Monday morning. If you don't get to the point, you and I will be sitting here wondering what you're talking about. He crossed his legs and clasped his hands. I don't think I need to explain everything. I shook my head. I agree. You don't say anything. I don't do anything. In a couple of months, we will hear that your son was killed in prison, and it will probably affect us in different ways. He straightened up. I could take this as a threat to my son's life. Junior, stop it. Just stop it. If you need something from me, tell me. Tell me what you want me to do and what I will get for it. I will weigh whether your dirty stack of silver is worth what your son did to mine. He tried to put on an innocent face, but like a wolf among sheep, he had no idea what it looked like. Here's the thing. My son would never harm a living being. It was your wife who deceived him. I was glad I watched Sally and Ed negotiate. No matter what was said, they sat there as if someone were reading a phone book. I wanted to stand up and calmly strangle this insignificant person. Instead, I imagined a phone book. Apparently, that was the end of his sentence. After a short pause, he asked, "What do you say?" "Is English your native language? I'm interested because I swear I told you. Tell me what you want me to do and what I'll get for it, and I'll decide whether to do it or not." Suddenly, his legs became interesting to him. He stared at them and muttered, "You see, I don't dare." "Junior, I understand everything. You don't want to say anything. This concludes our conversation. Is there anything else?" Junior looked around. Then he stared at me again, as if trying to look into my soul. I stared back, wondering if he even had a soul. "Bob, Dickie told me that your wife asked him to sedate your children so they could spend time together without interruption." I instantly responded with the obvious question. "He's in jail. When did he inform you about this evil practice?" "Well, unfortunately, this has been going on for a while now." I smiled. "It's not unfortunate. Now you are my accomplice. You can serve time too. Maybe, if I'm lucky, someday I'll have a fireplace and I can hang your and your son's cookies above it. If you're going to invent something, then come up with something better." He sighed heavily, resigned to the fact that he would have to speak further. "Okay, I understand why you are so successful. You're not a fool. My stupid offspring is a walking disaster. But he really meant no harm. He's just not smart enough for that. You're right, if he goes to a maximum security prison, he will be dealt with in his own way. I need to avoid this. I'm sure you can come up with a plausible story that will shift the blame to your wife. My son will be given a shorter sentence. If you do this for me, I will help you get your old life back and invest $1 million in your son's future. What do you say? You are asking me to bear false witness. It's your idea. Your son hurt mine, and you want me to take all the risk." He almost squirmed. "I'm in a hopeless situation. I can't do anything. It will look like I'm trying to bribe the court, and you are beyond suspicion. That's why we talk, just you and me. We will hold each other hostage. If either of us tells what happened, our own criminal plot will be revealed." I shook my head. "I'm going to hell, there's no doubt about it. I'm selling my own son." I paused and then continued. "I hate my wife. There is no doubt about that either, but I have always seen that she is a devoted mother. I'm afraid if I make something up, it will be as bad as your attempt. What should we do now?" "You call my former employer. You will tell him to take me back as a partner. He can retain a controlling stake, but now I will be his partner. This will be an act of goodwill. We'll meet on Monday morning, and I'll come up with a story like you suggested. If you want to make changes to the lie, I don't care. For this lie, you will give me 2 cashier's checks. One for $1 million for my son's trust, and one for $200,000 for me for my creative services. I think we can arrange it. Normally, I would be afraid that your next trick would be to blame me. Like, I came to you with extortion, and it is my wife and I who are the villains, and you and your poor son are the victims. I need something you give me in exchange to make sure you don't betray me. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but I want to make sure you and I understand that we are obstructing justice at your suggestion and our lies bind us. I'll think of something. Meet me on Monday at 11 o'clock at Starbucks on 3rd Street. We will stand with coffee on the street, discuss our business, and go our separate ways. Agreed. I am expecting a call by the end of Sunday confirming my return to work as a gesture of goodwill. The rest is my lie at your request, your payment for it, and your obligation to remain silent at 11 o'clock on Monday. Will Mr. Cheatham give me a ride home? Certainly. I have to admit, my story on Monday was amazing. This was the best nonsense that Sally, Ed, and the city attorney could come up with in just over 10 hours. The younger one was delighted and willingly handed over the checks to me. When he was arrested for obstruction of justice, he was much less pleased. One of the things Sally took care of before I went to bed on Friday was making sure I had a microphone. It was in my belt buckle. The entire conversation with Cheatham was recorded. Looks like he might be disbarred. Not only was Junior and I recorded on my belt buckle, but so were 4 different law enforcement officers using parabolic microphones to record the whole thing from a house a block away from my condo. When they heard the meeting place, they were able to arrive at the park while I was finishing my business. The young city attorney was hell-bent on getting Junior locked up. Buying bonds to force the city to settle a lawsuit was unethical. She didn't like that he could bully the city and hurt people by using his money for the good of society. She considered it a racket. By the time it was over, she had fired 4 high-ranking government officials and added racketeering charges to Junior's case. I was reinstated as a partner with a 33% stake in the company. The owner retained 67% to pass on to his 2 children and enable them to retain control when he retired. He was very apologetic. It turned out that my boss had 2 options: accept a large sum of money and admit a new partner, whose only request was that I be fired, or let Junior lure away all the customers by offering them discounts. In this case, we would both lose our jobs. Although he hated doing this to me, he loved to eat. Oh yes, this is also racketeering and was added to the list of Junior's sins. Dickie was great in his defense, in the presence of his lawyer, who advised him not to answer questions. He and his father will probably share a cell. Mary's fate changed dramatically over one weekend. She went from being the mother of the children in our beautiful home to being a prisoner in an orange robe and a 6 by 8 foot cell. She knew her son was receiving medication, but thought it was harmless. Suddenly life was good again. The city settled the case of my false arrest. The check for over $1 million went to my lawyers and my children's future. I was debt-free, moved back into my home, and began rebuilding my life. We set a date for our divorce proceedings. The interest of Mary's lawyers has noticeably waned. One of them did show up for the hearing and did enough to prevent negligence charges from being added to their firm. The divorce was officially finalized. I was awarded full custody of the children. Mary faced a serious prison sentence. As I walked out of the courtroom with my first genuine smile in a long time, I heard Mary's faint voice say, "Bob, we need to talk." My smile grew even wider and my steps quickened, leaving her behind. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.